Researchers came up with a terminology besides the chrono clock for the gut. It's actually called gut jet lag. It's a pretty useful term because it's language that people already kind of can understand. It's the loss of that microbial rhythm, right? That synchronization, that function, that when we have that loss of that function, it's impairing that intestinal barrier, reduction in the beneficial bacteria. When we reduce the beneficial bacteria, we're also reducing what they do, which is the production of our short chain fatty acids, which are responsible for keeping inflammation down. When we're not keeping inflammation down, now we're heading in the opposite direction.
Welcome to the Two Curious MD podcast. I'm Dr. Ali Ahmed.
And I'm Dr. Soraya Rahman.
With the wisdom from holistic, alternative, and these conventional medicine, we are here to challenge the status quo.
We're curious about the connectivity and complexity between diverse fields of knowledge as they relate to consciousness, chronic illness, mental health, resilience, and beyond.
Learning more about the art and science of healing, or listening to stories of extraordinary healing. You're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Two Curious MD podcast, where medicine is more than science. It's story, art, connection, and integration. So it's a lot of things. And here we are today with Dr. Monisha Bhanote.
Thank you so much, Alia, for that introduction. I'll give Dr. Monisha Bhanote's bio here. She's an MD, FCAP, and American Board of Integrative Medicine certified, leading authority in longevity medicine, cellular health, and integrative lifestyle practices. As the only quintuple board certified physician in the United States in this field, her expertise uniquely bridges conventional diagnostics with holistic wellness. Her board certifications span anatomic and clinical pathology, cytopathology, integrative medicine, and culinary medicine. I love this. You spent decades diagnosing over 1 million disease cases at the microscopic level. And then you have that profound understanding of how lifestyle choices influence upstream biological signaling long before chronic disease manifests. Driven by an insatiable curiosity about the human body, she founded the Wellcula Institute to merge modern molecular science with ancient wellness traditions. She's the best-selling author of The Anatomy of Well-Being, a global keynote speaker, and the pioneer behind the trademark cell care philosophy. Welcome to the Two Curious MDs podcast, Dr. Bhanote. We're so excited to have you.
Oh, thank you so much, both of you, for having me. I love the name of this podcast, right? Two Curious MDs, because I think that pretty much sums up what I am. I'm just like curious about life, how the human body works. How can we really spend our time on this planet living our best lives? And so I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today. And thank you again for having me.
You. Oh, thank you so much for being here. I was going to say I've been traveling quite a lot. I don't know about you, and I think a lot of people have. This is the summer travel season, and I'm just so excited that we have this ability to talk to you about this very, I think, timely topic and interesting topic, resilience and staying aligned in a disruptive world. I think that's one of the kind of ways where all this knowledge comes to bear and makes it really practical. So I'm really curious because I just flew cross country. I try to keep hydrated. I know that lots of things are happening while we're up in the air, and I just want to unpack some of those things and make this such a useful podcast and practical one for people who are traveling this summer.
And
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
I'm also curious to know about the domestic, because we're international travelers as well. So just the domestic travel resilience and international travel resilience seems.
Let me give you some framework there. When I tell you that I'm a travel resilience expert here, if I actually told you the type of travel I do, just to like kind of put that framework into place for the people listening, right? Like I'm usually across multiple time zones, usually on a different continent, sometimes 2 continents at a time, sometimes even 3. I'm pretty much 2 out of 4 weeks of a month I am away. That makes it 50% of the year. I am not in my house. And that includes both domestic and international travel. Like, for example, I just got back from 2 weeks in I was in London for about a week, speaking at an integrative conference, their biggest integrative medicine conference in the UK. And then I went from the UK to Greece, which is another 2 hour. So we're going from East Coast to the UK, which is a 5 hour time difference. Then we're going another 2 hours to Greece, which is another time difference for a longevity festival that I was speaking at. And then coming back 7 hours to the East Coast and then going right into clinic care, patient care, all of that. And this is something I've been, not just this month that I do. Literally, it's an every month thing. So when I started observing what was going on in my body physiologically, and sometimes even I remember like 2 years ago, my father traveled with me. He's 75 years old, right? And I'm like, Dad, we're going, and we weren't going to Europe. We went to Southeast Asia and 5 countries. So you can imagine you're bringing your parents along with you, and I'm like, okay, we're going to be in this country, this country, this country. I can't have you getting sick. I need to make sure you're supported. I need to make sure all these different things. And this is when I really started looking deep into, travel medicine and what is it? And I found that travel medicine, for the most part, really stops with, oh, you're traveling to this country and there might be malaria there. So you need to protect yourself from that. Or you need to get vaccinated from this. But it doesn't tell you about the everyday stuff, whether you're traveling just basically to go from New York to Florida, which in itself has its own physiology, or you're traveling across time zones and countries. So, what I basically found is, coming from a physician perspective, that our cells are getting exposed to the different things in these different environments. And they fall along 5 physiologic pathways. And that's kind of what I want to unpack today is like, what's that physiology of really what is happening? Because I think when people start like hearing this, they'll be like, oh, you're right. I've seen this happen to me. Maybe that wasn't the best choice of that decision because I didn't know that that was really happening. So, to give you some framework, so the 5 pathways I like to talk about are digestion, immunity, focus, energy, and recovery. And I think those kind of blend in because it's almost like a circle. It's not like taking notes what happens and what happens. It's like this interconnected and you're going in and out of this like way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you for taking notes there, Alia.
I
Because
I
I
was
was
just
thinking
writing
about,
it down because I think it's good for
yeah,
the audience to hear this again. Digestion, immunity, focus, energy, and recovery.
recovery. There
Okay,
you
let's
go.
take it
We're
from
taking
there.
notes. And I actually want to also drop in as you're talking, this is another hidden topic that's in there is how much cumulative radiation do we get from flying, right? Nobody's ever really thinking about that. Nobody's really thinking about what the atmosphere is around us when we're, at 35,000 feet. So I'm just so curious as to hear how this physiology, because physiology, as we know, changes depending on whether you're under the deep sea, in the air, or on land. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, why don't we start with gut? Gut's the easiest, I think, to start with because this is a pathway I think most travelers kind of feel right away. I mean, I have patients like come back for their trip and be like, "I have not had a bowel movement in a week." And I'm like, Wait a minute, what? What are you talking about?" Right? And this applies to both adults and children. And I know you guys are both pediatricians, right? And the kids might not be saying anything, but it's also happening to them because it's physiology, right? And so it doesn't really matter how disciplined you might be at home. Like it matters what's going on when you're on the road because that's really I like to think of when you're on the road, whether it's a road trip or flying, is kind of where like the holes in the system start showing up because the body's under a little bit more stress than it would be at home. And mind you, we're in a lot of stress at home, but like it's like those holes kind of start showing up. So when I think of digestion, I'm thinking of, all right, what's going on in your gut? And if we think of digestion not just as a I'm digesting my food, and we think of it as a almost like it's got its own circadian clock. And there's research that actually shows that the gut microbiome has its own circadian clock independent of our sleep wake cycle, our suprachiasmatic nucleus, that cycle, which is totally fascinating because it also takes longer for that clock to reset. So when we fly, there's four things that are happening in the gut simultaneously at the same time that's going to influence your digestion. I believe, if I remember correctly, that study was like from maybe last year, 2025, where it discussed the chrono clock of the microbiota of your microbiome. And what it said is that there is a synchronized relationship between your circadian rhythm, your gut microbiome. And the gut microbiome follows that 24-hour oscillation, and different microbiota will peak at different times. So when you're crossing time zones, that gets disrupted, right? So if that disruption happens, it can take up to 3 to 5 days longer to resynchronize. And you might already be back from your trip, right? It might be a week later and you're back. And that's when you're like, oh, yeah, okay, I did not have that bowel movement, or I did not feel as well. So that's the first thing that's happening. The second thing that's happening, and I think some people are aware of this, but is the cabin humidity, right? So the cabin humidity is about 20% less. So human health, like if you even look at your, I just had the AC guys here last week, and they have the panel on the wall for the AC conditioning, and it's like it should be between 40 to 60%. That's what human health likes, right? So when you're up in the air, that humidity is dropping more than 20%, right? So it's going down to 20%. So they say that flying is like drier than a Sahara desert. And it makes me think of like all these like influencers putting like, these face masks on and the moisturizer and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, you can't do that on your gut microbiome. There's, there's dehydration happening in your lining, right?
How do the microbiota tell time? If you can get to that as well.
Yeah, yeah. So they have their own clock, basically. That's what's been documented in biology. So they are dependent on our when we provide them food, right? So when we have a normal like eating schedule, they also stay on that normal eating schedule. You know that when we get on a plane, as soon as we get on a plane, especially if it's an overnight flight to like say Europe or something, you sit down and 1 hour later, they're already feeding you, and it might be 11 o'clock at night, or they're feeding you and it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, your local time. And so we're already starting that process. So I know for me, the flight attendants sometimes don't like me because I'm like, can I just have my meal later, or can we just leave it here and then I'll like eat it later, because I'm trying to really stick to that. And then the third thing is the cabin pressure, which I think people are very familiar with. When you have that change in altitude, that change in altitude slows your gut motility, right? So, and it makes gases expand differently. And the way I like to think of this is, when you get like a bag of pretzels or chips on the airplane, and you get the bag and it's like fully like kind of like there's gas in it, right? Unless it's like one that's leaked, but there's gas in it. Well, that's what happens inside our gut that people don't realize. And we now even don't realize more because we stopped wearing pants that button up, because now we're like in yoga pants and stretch pants. So we don't even realize this is like happening. So that gas expansion is happening. Your gut motility itself is slowing down when you have a higher altitude. And then the fourth would be when you disrupt your sleep. Melatonin is not just a sleep hormone. It's produced, in intestinal cells, and it plays a direct role in influencing that gut integrity barrier. So you are basically opening up that gut lining to become a little bit more leaky when you travel if you are not intentionally supporting it. And that's just the gut. Right? So when people are like, "Oh, I just felt bloated on the plane," or "I didn't have a bowel movement," there's a number of physiologic processes that's happening. And if I think about what people are doing, they're making it worse because now you add on the salty food, right? You add on the airport food, which is like the worst. You add on the alcohol, so all these things. Now you can imagine your gut's just like literally on fire.
Mm.
I like to travel with
That's amazing.
Which
Yeah.
should you like to travel with less?
Make our own.
When I travel, I try to take a little bit of my own food on the plane because you never know when you're gonna get fed too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
That's what
definitely
it's about, the timing, right? The time restricted eating. Is that what you're talking about? What that's one
Mhm.
of those interventions?
Yeah, it's kinda like resetting based you're resetting your biology based off of where you're headed, and if you can reset that, that will make your trip, even if it's a weekend trip, just settle a lot better. And it was interesting because my assistant last week so I had just come back from Greece, which is a 7-hour time difference, and she had gone to California, and it was only a 3-hour time difference, and, obviously West versus East, a little bit different, but she was like, at 6 p.m., she's like, "I can't make it through the day, I need caffeine, I need to get some coffee," like, really struggling, and up till 4 or 5 in the morning, I got back from my trip went to bed at a normal hour, woke up the next day 6:30 normal hour. Because I was very like, okay, I know what I need to do because obviously I need to function the rest of the week. I can't be like crashing in the middle of the night. So I think being aware that your gut is probably one of the first things you're gonna feel, but also the one that you have the most control over, right? Like you said, Alia, like packing your food, packing a snack, like not necessarily, people are like, they know they have to drink more water. So we see the water bottles, that's fine. But you also have to think about food timing and what is the food that you're eating. I'm somebody it's pretty funny what I pack. Like, I travel with tofu, like little cooked tofu packs because I don't know when I'm gonna find something that I can eat. So even if I find a salad or something, I can put the tofu on top of there. But yeah, just kind of thinking about that. Another thing I like to travel with when it comes from a gut perspective is CCF, which is cumin, coriander, and fennel. They're just herbs and like that we use in our cooking, right? And you can make a CCF tea. So now, yes, there you go, right? So all you have to do is ask for some water. And what's great about it is kids can even have this, right? So it's like just get some hot water, heat it up and kind of relieve like the digestion that way. So CCF is another quick hack. When I had a clinic in person, I used to make little spice jar bottles for my patients. So like when they were traveling, they just take like they have the little spice jar and they kind of sprinkle it on and drink that. So that's another kind of easy, I don't want to call it a hack, like just like something to think about. Most people think about electrolytes. They're not thinking about, all right, maybe there's something, more with the digestion
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. And going back to Alia, your question, I know you were asking like a more specific question and I had to look it up because I'm like, yeah, how does how I eat, manifest in what's happening to my gut microbiome? And that there's a name for it called chronodisruption.
Yes.
Or that, right? Like there's like a so basically because of the way we in one time zone are eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner in these fasting feeding cycles, everything shifts to actually get your genes to express differently. So there are clock genes on that are, receptor mediated on the bacteria themselves, on our gut microbiome themselves, that absolutely changes what they do. So, like you said, I mean, at that really beautiful fundamental level, what you eat, when you eat, how you eat, and what kind of these little hacks or tools and tricks that you employ can really speak to the gene expression. And therefore, those genes are then going to get up to speed to that next time zone that you're about to hit because your brain has already told your gut, this is what we're going to do, guys. Everybody wake up, instead of let's land, let's get to the hotel, let's order some food. And then the gut microbiome is like, what the hell is happening right now? You are eating
Yeah.
when you should be sleeping. We are confused. And that's that mismatch, right?
It's kind of funny. They actually researchers came up with a terminology besides the chrono clock for the gut. It's actually called gut jet lag. Right. So that they're calling it, I think it's a pretty useful term because it's language that people already kind of can understand. Basically, as you mentioned, it's if we kind of summarize it, it's the loss of that microbial rhythm. right? That synchronization, that function, that when we have that loss of that function, it's impairing that intestinal barrier. With reduction in the beneficial bacteria, when we reduce the beneficial bacteria, we're also reducing what they do, which is the production of our short chain fatty acids, which are responsible for keeping inflammation down. When we're not keeping inflammation down, now we're heading in the opposite direction, right? So now we're activating some other things. Some ingredients I already mentioned, cumin, coriander, fennel are great. Other things that I utilize is ginger, amla, both of them really good for digestive ease, can be beneficial. Obviously meal timing, like the lifestyle, like nothing replaces a proper lifestyle. Okay. There's nothing above that. And then also thinking about, actually, I was just working on something for one of the programs we have coming up is people really forget to eat certain food groups. And one of those food groups is fermented food groups. And so making sure wherever you go, you're incorporating some kind of fermentable food kind of to rebuild. Right. So that's the best part of traveling to other countries is most countries have something that's fermented that we can eat.
Was a great segue to your next topic, the immunity. The other, yeah.
Yeah. So with immunity, okay, so immunity works a little bit different, right? So when we think of immunity, most people are like, oh, I always get sick when I travel. And they're thinking their immune system is a problem. And, it's fascinating because it's like people actually get sick when they get back home. And then they'll be like, oh, I picked up a bug. Something happened along the way. Oh, that person like 2 seats over from me was coughing, or I was like at Disneyland and everybody was sick or something like that. But when we think of the immune system and what's actually happening is it's our stress response. We have not mastered our stress response. Like in TV, I think the best reality TV is just sitting in an airport watching people and how stressed out they are. Like you don't even have to do anything. It's like its own show because they haven't figured out like, okay, there's gonna be a line. There's gonna, you're gonna have to walk. You're gonna have to do this and that, and there's gonna be noise. But they haven't figured out. All right, there's quiet spaces that you can go find. Like I've like located quiet spaces like in different airports. I plan ahead to make sure that, some of the best airports do have lounges that you can use and they have quiet areas in those lounges, or they even have like some yoga spaces or meditation spaces. Worst case scenario, go find a chapel, like just to kind of quiet the nervous system. Because as you guys obviously know, when you are under stress, what happens? Cortisol is released. When excess cortisol is released and sustained, it's also creating that the immune system can't work. And this is tied tightly in with the gut because you've already kind of opened that window with the gut not being optimal and with a significant portion of our immune system living within the gut. Now we're just kind of pushing it a little bit further, right? And I think if we think about it, uh, it's like the immune system also follows its own circadian rhythm. I always say that the first thing to do when you land anywhere is go if it's daylight and you're landing, go take a walk outside first to get the sunlight to reset the circadian rhythm. But secondly, if you can walk to like a park or a forest or something like that, you can actually support your immune system to create natural killer cells due to the phytocidins in the trees, right? So go hug a tree, like walk outside, just go hug
This
a
is just
tree.
as you land, or is this like the next day? How would you?
No, absolutely not. Don't wait the next day. Do not wait the next day. I mean, like I pretty much drop off my luggage and I'll like go for like a 1 or 2 hour walk. If you're like that tired and you're like you don't want to walk, get on one of those hop on, hop off buses. Just take a tour and sit at the top and reset. But definitely don't go and try and sleep because you're not going to be resetting then. You're definitely not going to be resetting. I think like when it comes to immunity, people are concerned about the wrong things. Like they're like, "Oh, like the air on airplanes is not clean," or "I'm gonna get sick from that." Surprisingly, the air on airplanes, the strength of those HEPA filters that have been tested is more clean than most homes, okay? So I would not be worried about that. The area I would be worried about is the area of that that jetway where you're walking on to get on that plane? There. That, like, 10, 15 feet, that's where I would be worried about because there's nothing there from a protection standpoint, and then that's getting a lot of exposures.
You say about the small little bathrooms in
The
there.
small little bathrooms, those are, obviously you wanna carry wipes and stuff like that around with you, but the actual airplane itself, that filtration air system is really, really good. Yeah. The
Yeah, I
other thing
definitely agree, and then sometimes when they have you all pile on into the jetway and everybody's just standing there for 10, 15 minutes, that does
that's
not
the
feel
worst
right.
part. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, 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 that is absolutely the worst part, and then also I think about it from the perspective of maybe, I see this more in the US than than other countries is when we get off the airplane, there's always like 10 to 12 wheelchairs lined up waiting to take passengers off the plane. And I'm like, okay, that's not like if these people are truly compromised in their health, this is not the healthiest way for them to get off the airplane where there's like literally
Well,
12 lined up. I think there's also, the myth around radiation, cosmic radiation. So when we're thinking about where to sit on an airplane, if you sit closer to the window with the window open, and mind you, I am a window seat person, you are going to get more cosmic radiation. So now in the newer planes, the good thing is you actually see like there's little buttons to like lower the light, right? So it's you're not getting as much, which is pretty cool. So I think thinking about it from the perspective of okay, there are going to be some exposures. How can you optimize it? Optimizing also your stress response is probably gonna be one of the keys to that, right? Because if you're more stressed, your immune system is just gonna be releasing more inflammatory cytokines and kinda opening up that inflammation pathway. There's no doubt that everything we do in life is stressful, it's a matter of how are you managing it?
yeah.
And I think, some people manage it with alcohol. That's, to me, I'm like, okay, that's not solving the problem there. I think if we think about supporting it with botanicals, herbs, some of the ones that are well known, that we even saw during, the pandemic was things like astragalus for immunity, showed some great
Distracting,
benefit when
yeah.
it comes to like viral exposures. So I think we just need to start thinking about how we're moving our body through the world in a more intentional way, like a deeper way, like thinking, like I always say, cell care is self care, right? So, how can you protect your cells? And for somebody who has diagnosed so many diseases under the microscope, I'm always like, okay, I pull out my little cell model, I talk to my patients, I'm like, see these guys? We've got trillions of these guys, right? We need to protect all of this. Like, and let's do it in the right way.
I love this, and thank you for bringing up, kind of like your passion for pathology and that level at which we can actually detect disease, and that's been a science as well. And then you also bracket it with like the culinary science. So I'm kind of also really interested in the pathway that you took to where you are today. Yeah, like what got you started here?
Yeah, so it's been a long journey. Let me give you the pathway that it took me to get here in the short amount of time we have. So I started out, as all right, I'm going to be a doctor when I grow up because that was kind of the path, as a first generation immigrant. You get to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. I did pre-med, pre-law, did not do engineering because my father was an engineer, and law was way too much reading and no pretty pictures. So I'm like, "All right, I'll go down the medical route and see what happens there." And so I went into medicine, originally as a internist doing internal medicine residency, and very, very quickly realized that I was not solving a problem and was like, okay, this is really dissatisfying to me and to my patients. And when this is back in the day when our H&Ps were literally handwritten, like there was no EMR.
Yeah,
Okay.
we
And
remember those.
every couple
I
of
used to put it
weeks
in our
or months.
pocket.
Yeah, yeah, right? Every couple weeks or months, I'd see, like, the same patient come back in either emergency room or in the clinic or something, and I'd be like, "Oh, I wrote this H&P." Like, I'm like, "Nothing's changed. What's going on?" And so at that time, I'm like, "Okay, I can't continue on this path. Let me think about what would I enjoy doing where I can actually help somebody." And I had done a lot of rotations in radiology, and I was like, "Okay, I guess I could do interventional, but I really don't want to sit in the dark for the rest of my life." And I know that's not what radiology is, but I'm like super sensitive to like getting sun. So I
But it's
was
a
like,
nice dark room, and they all stood with their dictaphones. It was
I
awesome.
know. It was not for me. So I'm like, "All right, what is something that I could continuously learn and never get bored with because there's so much to learn?" Well, that's where pathology comes in, right? So pathology is, as you guys know, it's like being a doctor's doctor. You know, like everything about everything, like how the body works on that cellular level, literally looking at all kinds of cells. So I did. I went down in the route of doing a pathology residency. And then I even further subspecialized with a couple of fellowships, one in cytopathology, which is literally I could look at a single cell and diagnose disease, whether that's like a thyroid FNA or, a body fluid or something like that. And then I added on another layer of this is me being curious here, right? Of breast cancer, bone, and soft tissue cancer. And really going, all right, we have these organs. Why am I diagnosing so many diseases? And not just like inflammation. I mean, cancer after cancer after cancer. And when your youngest patient is 18 years old and you're like, wait a minute, her genetics are normal, what is going on in the world, right? And honestly, it would have been easy for me to just sit in my office because we also have our dictaphone, but we sit with light and we have our microscope and we're looking at these beautiful colors, pink and purple through the microscope and stuff. And I could just sit there and look and screen my thyroid FNAs all day long or my breast cases. But something in me was kinda going, "You know something that a lot of people have never seen in the world and never will," and actually most doctors have never seen and never will. So, yes, you can have a very, very nice, comfortable life, an easy life, just sitting here and doing this, or you can take what you know and figure out a way to really help people, like, being that doctor that you were supposed to be 25 years 20 years ago when it came out, and this path didn't exist back then, right? So integrative medicine, it was not so well known, there was no conversation around it as a option to do, like, residency or fellowship in it, so I did. So I pursued an integrative medicine fellowship at the Andrew Weil Center. I pursued culinary medicine. So I was basically bridging my two ends, like the diagnostics. How do you create disease? Like, what's actually happening? And then how do I take it from, okay, I know what's happening at the cellular level, but then I also know people's lifestyles and what they're doing and how that's impacting it. So how do I bridge those 2? And that's kinda what brings me to what I'm doing today. So I do have my own telehealth clinic and educational kinda platform, like, that I walk my patients through. I do retreats, which is absolutely amazing. We go to beautiful international destinations and do our, more in-person, stress management techniques, meditation, that
Well,
kind
we
of
can
stuff,
really
breath
put in
work.
the travel resiliency as you do those retreats can
Yes, absolutely,
amazing.
but then that's where I was like, "Okay, there's still a problem I have to solve for." And that's where in the last few years, I've been making this observation about a lot of my patients love to travel, but then not even my patients, like my colleagues also, they're all traveling and then they all are like texting each other. Oh, do you have this in your room? Or can you help me with this? Or my patients, we text like this happened. And I'm like, "Why are you guys not good travelers?" And I'm like, Have I just got this whole system down or something?" And so then I started really looking at it and I'm like, because people aren't thinking of their body like these little cells, like the way I'm literally trained to do and to protect my body.
Mm.
So a couple of years ago, when I was taking my father with me on this trip to Southeast Asia, we didn't just go on the trip. I went with an apothecary of herbs, and I'm like, "Okay, we're gonna take this, and we're gonna take this because we need to protect our digestion, we need to protect our immunity." I need to be able to focus because, well, I'm gonna be speaking, or I'm gonna be in meetings, or I'm gonna be doing this, and we need to be able to, like, have energy because, well, if we're going this far, we're gonna be walking 20,000 steps a day, okay? So part of that apothecary is now my, next business, which is Travella Wellness, which is the first physician formulated travel wellness and longevity supplement that brings together basically botanical intelligence using the botanicals of, Ayurveda, the botanicals of traditional Chinese medicine that are well established for the last 5,000 years to help with those five physiologic pathways and bringing together the longevity science ingredients that I know are beneficial for people's cells because we're getting all these exposures. Like, we're not living like from 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Life is different, okay? So that the birth of, after my book, The Anatomy of Well-Being, the new birth of my baby is basically Trevella, which is what we've been formulating for the last couple of years and is finally like available for people. So it's technically a daily wellness supplement that doesn't exist and fills the gap for something that I saw in the market that is absolutely necessary for people from a cellular health benefit standpoint. And it was something me and my father were taking. I mean, my father was climbing Batu caves in Kuala Lumpur, like up the whatever 100 steps, like before I was getting up there. And he's 75, right? So we didn't get sick on this month-long trip, and it was fabulous. And the beautiful thing is, we're now going to take Trivella into trial at the University of Florida. So super excited about that. And yeah, but part of that was also my own personal backstory of why I even got into the supplement space in the first place, which is its own story, if you want me to share that.
Yeah. I love how you're bringing that,
Yeah.
the digestion community, how focus becomes kind of where's our focus and how we're going to prepare for a change in that focus as we do different things. And energetically, how do we transition from one circadian rhythm to another? What's going to happen to that energy system? And at that cellular level, because the mitochondria is everything towards energy and how we, and then tell us more about recovery. What does that look like as we're again transitioning back or, in terms of travel?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, focus definitely in itself gets impacted because, well, first of all, we have hypoxia. I already mentioned the change in oxygen, right? We're going to have a hypoxia. I already mentioned the cortisol problem. So that's also going to influence how well your brain is going to work. And then we have the dehydration. So that all gets impacted, right? That all gets compounded. Then with the energy production, because our body experiences more oxidative stress, right? Our cells, our mitochondria are actually going to be influenced on how they are functioning. So when people think of travel fatigue, oh, I'm just tired because I took a trip, they're not realizing that no, the cosmic radiation created more reactive oxygen species than if you were on the ground, right? So you need to more intentionally protect that. So the recovery is the whole part of what are you doing with your digestion, immunity, focus, energy. And if you'd allow me to share the story of the focus and cognition, I think this will kind of tie it all in together. During the pandemic, how was the pandemic for you guys? Did you guys enjoy it or was it like not good?
We were both, I think, in hospital medicine at the time, and
It was
It
awful.
was
I'm still recovering from it.
okay. You're still recovering.
life
Okay.
changing, let's just say.
Life changing.
Life
Okay, so
altering.
I think we
Yeah.
could all agree it was life changing. personally, I love the pandemic up to a point. And so I love the pandemic because it gave like the hospitals were closed. So no operations going on. If there's no operations going on, well, I'm not going in to go make a diagnosis, right? Because there's no pathology work. So I would use that time to basically take like 4 or 5 mile long walks and listen to podcasts and audiobooks and just, start like taking care of myself. It's time
Mhm.
we never have as physicians, right? To actually do anything for ourselves. On one of those, Saturday morning walks, I'm taking a walk and it's around like 9:30 in the morning, and out of nowhere, I feel something hit me, like, at the top of my head, and I'm like, "Okay, what's going on here?" I was wearing a baseball cap, I had my headphones in, yeah, I basically had my cell phone on me, nothing else, and I'm walking through a residential neighborhood. I'm, like, looking up and I don't see anything in the sky, and I'm like, "Okay, I don't know what hit me." So I take my hat off, and then I put my hand to my head, and I look down at my hand, and it's, like, all covered in blood all the way up here, and then, I'm like I put my hand back to my head, and I'm like, "Oh my god, am I feeling brain here?" And as somebody who's, like, literally held organs in their hand, you can imagine what's going through my mind. I'm like, "Okay, there's something going on here." So all I did was call 911 because I didn't know what else to do. And so while I'm waiting for the ambulance to come, this guy comes up to me and he goes, "Did I just hit you in the head with my golf ball?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, where's the golf ball?" Right? So this golf ball was going 150 miles an hour, hit me in my left temporoparietal region, and bounced another 50 yards. And I was on the street. I was not on a golf course or anything like that. I was on a residential street. And so, long story short, basically, I was rushed to the emergency room, got stitched up, basically sent home to be followed up with neurology and physical therapy and all this stuff. And suffered 3 cervical disc herniations because the force was so much. But what was interesting is you go from having zero health problems to literally having everything in a textbook when it comes to a traumatic brain injury. So I suffered a traumatic brain injury, which meant memory loss, which meant focus issues, which meant ear ringing, ear pressure, chronic pain, chronic fatigue, sleep issues, autoimmunity, digestive issues, PTSD issues. Basically, you name it, it was like textbook like craziness. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do here because, like, literally, I was in the best shape of my life, and then 1 second later, I'm, like, experiencing this cascade and going to all the specialists, and they're all like, "Okay, well, we can give you ADHD meds for your focus, we can give you Alzheimer's meds for your memory loss, we can give you, Parkinson's because I had balance issues, we can give you anxiety meds, depression meds, we can give you injections for the pain." The surgeon wanted to do an anterior discectomy, which for somebody, I spend a lot of time in operating rooms. I'm like, there's no way you're opening up my neck and taking 3 discs out and then like no, 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 no. So it was like a host of like everything. And this went on for years. But part of that was if I didn't have the integrative training that I have, to go, all right, there's got to be another way to work through this than to just go, all right, this is the only option. So, yes, I did the physical therapy and lots of physical therapy, but it was really the lifestyle approaches through, like, I remember the ER physicians like, oh, go sleep it off. And I'm like, wait a minute, I need to go make brain-derived neurotropic factor. The only way to do that is to move my body. Why are you telling me to sleep it off? And so really taking that lifestyle approach and going, all right, how can I optimize the stuff that was now taken away? Like I couldn't see, so I had vision problems. So now, obviously I'm not looking through a microscope properly. I couldn't read or type or talk, like I was dropping words or like slurring from, fatigue. And it was basically like, how do you rebuild a human body? And so doing that, a big part of my regimen was supplements. Okay. So all the botanicals and herbs, anything that I could do without side effects of like my body just does not like it. Like the only medication I took was 1.5 Xanax pills, and one was a practice pill because I needed to get an MRI done, and I was like, "I'm scared of this MRI machine because of the sound," because I was so sensitive to sound because I was hit, so now, like, I have sound sensitivity, so I on a Friday night at 7 o'clock, I took the pill to see, like, what the effect would be. It totally knocked me out, so then when I had to go for my MRI, I took half of, the lowest dose and had somebody drive me because it just knocks that's how sensitive I am to medications, and but the supplements is really what happened to rebuild, like, my body, and going from somebody who used to walk 4 or 5 miles a day to now I can only go, like, to my mailbox and back or to the end of the street and back because 'cause I'm so tired, and then I have to take a 3-hour nap. That was really taking down that neuroinflammation, taking down all the inflammation that's, like, happening in the body and going, "Alright, how can I rebuild my mitochondria? How can I rebuild my neurons? How can I do all this?" And so that's actually all the ingredients that ended up in Truvella is everything I took to rebuild my body. So, yeah, it's called Truvella, but and it works amazing on, like, when you're traveling, but this is actually meant for every day in a sense that there are a number of things that people are going through that they need support in their body, whether that's, their stress response, whether that is their focus. Most people aren't focusing. And when you go from as bad as I was to like now my brain is like, I wouldn't say it's back to where it was, but it is a lot better than where it was after the injury.
As you're
So,
even talking, I'm thinking of the people that are on shift work, right? The circadian rhythm is off. Like there are so many applications for this. And then the other aspect of it that comes up is climate change,
mhm.
and how what we are in right now across this country and across the world is just we're having to be resilient, not just to increased temperatures and dehydration, but also just this extreme heat. And then we have the air quality, right? The toxic kind of environmental exposures that all of us are going through. How do you recover from that? And so I love this idea that we can recover from, let's say, a traumatic brain injury if you can look at it as a systemic kind of cellular process. Yeah, process that's happening that includes all of this, your inflammatory
Yeah.
system, your nervous system,
I think
everything.
it all comes down to the cells, right? It's like, how do you repair the cells? And I
I
know
really
the
feel
goal.
really, you have really, sorry to interrupt, but I really want to highlight what you've just shared, as well as what Gurvan is speaking to, and kind of really bring it all together. You have shared the story of 1,000 patients and more. I mean, the stories that we hear just from one incident really demonstrates how that impacts so many things. And we started with travel, right? So we started with the circadian rhythm, the rhythm of the body, and how it's so connected to the environment, and how the environment has an impact on us and on our cells, and to look at it from the vantage of a cell. Like, I love that cell that I'm going to get one myself too, because the cell itself is so beautiful. It's just so magical. I mean, if I was a bio teacher teaching high school kids, I would just I would I would share to that joy of this what the cell does. The cell has a lipid bilayer. It has communication signals. It's got intercellular systems, some organelles that don't even have a membrane, and some do. And how all of these systems so beautifully, just beautifully doing things. I'm in awe of what the cell can do, and then what the cell can do together with all the other cells.
Yeah,
It's
the
just
cell's basically constantly communicating, right? And so most people are living through life with a disrupted communication, as I did in myself, my own story. And I think at the end of the day, when I talk to many of my patients, they're like, I just want to feel good enough to go see my grandkids and be able to go to Disney with them or go on, like, a lot of people are doing family travel right now, not get stuck in a hotel room because their body is not functioning. So, really, when I was building, my next iteration of, okay, I've been testing patients and looking at their cells for years and years, but how can I really simplify this and make it helpful for them? Because yeah, we can't have a perfect lifestyle every day. What I know about cells is what was put into Truvella. So,
yeah,
Yeah.
and how the cell is so magically regenerative. that we don't have to, as a pathologist, it's always about taking away the negative, like taking away the cancer, removing it, extracting it, chemoradiating it. But when no one talks about supporting the cell, the actual health of the cell, like keep it viable and so that then naturally that good thing will kind of beat out the bad. You don't
It's
have
called
to.
self-care.
There you go.
There we
Hashtag
go.
self-care.
Hashtag
Self-care is self-care.
self
Yes.
self-care,
Yeah.
self-care. You got it. And I
Yeah,
love
let's
this. I
let's
love the
celebrate
storytelling.
self-care was so 2000s, like, this is all about self-care, okay, guys?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Very 21st century. Yeah, absolutely. I've loved this conversation just
We want
for
to
bringing
pose
together.
the curious question.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, I just want to kind of bring together and thank you for sharing your story. I think that's just so powerful because I think we find time and time again when we do our own healing, it really helps us to understand at the in a very fundamental level what works. And when you kind of feel it in your own self, you can't wait to tell other people and you can't wait to share that. And I feel that energy from you is how can I be most effective? How can I bring this to more and more people? And so it's really lovely to connect with you in this way and really understand the passion that, and the intelligence and the curiosity and just the drive to get to that next answer, to find uncover more because as we're finding out, the more we know, the more we can do. And so just never to let that quest for knowledge and for that next horizon stop you. And so I'm gonna dare to ask you the curious question because you are an endlessly curious person, but I'm gonna do it anyway because we do it for everybody. What are you curious about, Monisha? What kind of gets you, kind of excited to do something or get out there. Here you're doing lots of different things. I'm sure the retreats and the speaking gigs and all of that are kind of all coming together. But what gets you curious? What are you curious about?
Yeah, I think, I'm really curious about how we can, from a planetary perspective, like kind of big world view, how we can, in a way, kind of not just save humanity, like save the humans, but save the animals, save the planet. Like to me, that's like a really big kind of overlying, all right, like what is it that we need to do and what transitions, and even if it's like at a person level, at a community level, at a state level, at a country level, the world is a lot bigger than the microcosm that each of us lives in. And I think because I've traveled to, over 50, I don't even know, I stopped counting how many countries, but and I see the way people live and what brings them joy, and then I return back and I'm like, wow, people are really living in their small, like, world and unhappy for reasons that, yeah, it makes sense, but at the same time, we have this short life, right? So what drives me and gives me curiosity is how can we make it so, and this is maybe naive of me, but I would just love to be able to, go into the bank and the person's having a great day. Like my banker's like having a great day, or drive down the road and you're like nobody has road rage, right? Like I still believe that's possible. And I think that's possible when people's cells are working the way they should. Like right now, their cells, as I describe it, are angry. Like everybody's got super, super angry cells. And I would love to like figure out, in my way, and I'm trying, how can we make happier cells? Because if we can make happier cells, we can also make happier humans. And happier humans can then make a happier planet, right? So I
There
know
we
I'm
go.
ambitious.
There we
super
go.
ambitious.
There we go.
I'm gonna now close with our rapid fire questions.
Okay. I love the ambition.
What's the number one habit that supports healthy cells?
Number one habit that supports healthy cells, I would say, is sleep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is inflammation always bad for cells?
Is information always bad for cells?
Inflammation.
Oh,
Infl-
inflammation. Oh, inflammation. No, inflammation is not bad for cells because inflammation can also be protective when it needs something to like die off, right? So, no, it's not.
okay. So, what nutrient do most people overlook for cell health?
The nutrient most overlooked for cell health. You know what? There is not one nutrient. I think this is where, for me, utilizing botanical intelligence and going, all right, our body needs this diversity in order for it to function and in order for the microbiome to function. So I think if it's not a nutrient, it's a category, and I think those categories are botanicals.
Okay, botanicals. And last question, how do we make ourselves younger?
Ooh, how do we make ourselves younger? All right, self plug, take some Trivella. No, but
Secret
I think making ourselves younger is multifactorial, right? It's really looking at all your lifestyle factors, like how you sleep, how you move, what you put in your body, what you put on your body, how you think, all of those, right? Toxins, environmental exposures, all of that is critical for making our cells younger. I like to use like the Christmas tree analogy, right? So like when we go and we're going shopping for a Christmas tree, we're looking for like even if you don't celebrate Christmas, people can kind of visually see this. We're looking for the like biggest, fluffiest, the one that smells the nicest, right? So that because when we bring it home, then our decorations can kind of hang on it and look beautiful, and then it looks great in pictures. Think of the human body in that way, right? Like that's the lifestyle. That's all those fundamentals that are absolutely critical. Then layering it on to how can you stay young is, yeah, okay, you can do some like, new technology things that we have, do some wearables to track something, do some infrared, add the supplements, add, all these different things, but none of that's going to work without that foundation, right? It could only make it better. So I always say stick with a foundation first and then build from there. And, when it comes to disease, being that 90 to 95% of our diseases are lifestyle related and not genetics, I think that puts a lot more power and control in our hands that people have kind of given up to this idea that, oh, it's in my family or, oh, this is just going to happen. No, we have a lot more control than we think.
Thank you. Wow.
That's a great note to end on. We have a lot more control than we think. And thank you so much for demonstrating all these beautiful ways that we can take advantage of that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and really you brought into our concepts of medicine is more than science. It's story, art, and connection. And your story really resonates with all aspects of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Two Curious ND podcast. We hope today's episode inspired you to ask new questions and explore fresh perspectives. We challenge you to ask us those unasked questions that you're curious about in your medical practice, condition, health, and wellness.
If you enjoyed the podcast, don't forget to subscribe, share it with somebody just as curious, and leave us a review. It helps us keep the curiosity alive. Post or comment with a question or curious inquiry that you have and seek to explore or learn with us. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time.